Okay, we're going live. Hi, welcome back. I realized that last time when I told you that I'd changed all my setup and you might not be able to hear me, that if you can't hear me, to please let me know. That doesn't work. If you can't hear me ask you to help me, you don't know that I need you to help me. So I think everything works now. There should be sound, there should be video. Everything seems good. Today I want again to do something a bit different. Previously we looked at open graph tags, we looked at remix, we looked at, what did we do last time? We did TypeScript once. Today I want to do a bit of design work in between. So I have this one website that we already looked at that is basically a placeholder. I need to have something in place so that I could have something to point people to and something to put into forms when I sign up to things. But now that is no longer sufficient and I need to give it a visual upgrade. I usually work in Sketch when I do that kind of work. And I started working on something as we see here. And then I realized, wait a second, maybe Sketch is not the best tool for that. So on the one hand, I want to keep working on this visual upgrade, which is something that we could look at more today. And I also want to compare two, maybe three tools based on one feature that they have, and that is layout, and more specifically auto layout, which some of them have now. So I work mobile first. I design my websites assuming they are a single column, and then as the browser gets wider, more stuff gets added and things move around. And I want ideally to only create one prototype, one mockup. What I'm going to skip here is the full paper prototype phase. Usually I like to do this in, what's the app? Notability, where you draw very rough sketches. Works very well with the iPad and the Apple Pencil, before you jump into very high fidelity mockups that show a lot of detail. When working with clients, showing a lot of detail is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, clients love looking at pretty pixels, but they easily get lost in border radiuses, border radii, and shades of blue and exact imagery that you use. Can't you make the logo bigger when you really want to talk about, is this element in the right position here? We want to start it. Does this belong here in the first place? So we're going to do a mix of that. We're going to jump into a bit of the more high fidelity work a bit too early, to be honest, but that's because we want to explore one of the features that this has. If you come from the old kind of design work, then you're used to receiving static mockups made in Photoshop usually. And that was ages ago when we had to take that and slice that up and combine it into tables and recreate that in HTML and CSS. The tools are more flexible and more web-like now. We're going to see one, potentially going to see one later, that is super web-like today. So to show you just one example, let's start with a random, I'm going to give you a random artboard here, and we are going to do a button. I'm in Sketch, starting out in Sketch. I'm a Sketch boy usually. I want to create a button. This is my button, and I am going to give this, we're going to change the color in a second, draw a rectangle around this, change the order around, and you're going to see why this is cool in just a second. So let's give this a border radius, remove the border, give it a nice blue color, and text can be white, let's say white. So on the one hand, what all these tools now have is components, reusable elements as we have them in React and in all the JavaScript-based front-end frameworks. So I can take this, I can group these two, and I can create Sketch calls them symbols. Convert layers into a reusable symbol. I'm gonna call this my button. And then I can add many of them. So I can now, from my list of components, list of symbols, select another button, and copy it here. And that by itself is not going to set the world on fire. But where it gets fun is when we can now change the text on them dynamically. Hey you. This of course doesn't look great, and that's, if everything was static in this tool, that's what we'd keep working with now. But because, where is the button now? I threw it over on the symbols page. This is just an artboard that we can change stuff on now. We're going to move it over right to where we use it. Would you put it up here? So I have one artboard that represents a button that is reused a bunch. So if I now go into my original button, into my blueprint, and I decide to change something, it changes in all of them at once, and I can override the text in this one. But this button is the wrong size. If the text only goes up to here, but the button is set to always be, what is it, 140 something pixels, that looks terrible. So what we can do is, what Sketch has is something called layout. We can give this button a horizontal or a vertical layout, and I'm just going to click on horizontal, and we already see this moved a bit. Why did this move a bit? So I can set it to no layout. If I set to horizontal layout and I resize it, we see the text kind of moves on here. And let us actually say this text in this. So if we hover over it, it's difficult to see on red, so I'm gonna make the button blue again. If I make this button blue again, and we zoom in here, we can see if I hover over this, there's a border around the text. It's probably difficult to see on stream. This is better when I zoom in more. There's a line here, there's a line here that shows me where on this button the text goes. Let's make it actually, let's invert this. Let's make this a dark background color. Let's make the button white, so that is easier to see. And the text needs to be black then as well. Let's make it black text. Maybe this helps. So there is, we see where the bounding box of the text happens. And this moves around a little because in this text we can say a few things. We can say where we want it to be attached to. Right now this text is it aligned well? So let's say this is 16 pixels from the left side, and then is it roughly 16 pixels here as well, I assume. 131, 147, 16. I hit 16 accidentally, but that works very well. And now if I say my text is center aligned, we see the text in its bounding box is now aligned to the left, to the left here, and to the center or to the right. This bounding box moves around with the text. The text moves inside of the bounding box. That's more it. And I can say inside of the bounding box, please be aligned like here. But that's still not ideal because I would like the text to also then have the same distance from the side as these other ones. So if I change the text, this is my button, it automatically grows with it. The layout makes it so that when the text grows wider, the button grows wider as well. And I have very few texts in my head apparently, because I did not remember that this was the text in the button in the first place. So this is nice. I can have, at least for a single element, a layout, and that updates automatically with the text that is in it. Now, if I, what else is there to say about the auto layout? And if I now go into, I think that's sufficient. And if I now go into my layout that I have here, we see repeating elements. We see I have a block here that this is eventually going to, and this is for now a placeholder text most likely, will show the services that the company that this site is about will offer. We're going to do web development, clickable prototypes, design sprints, because why not? And we see these could be components. If we do this in the React world, this could be a service card, that consists of an icon, a title, a description, and a button. So this is going to repeat a bunch. And let's actually create this as a component with size, with a layout, I mean. Right now it is, I did that already. I cheated a bit, of course. Where is it? It's this service. Let's call it service card, actually. Service card. Could be a service card component in React, but that Sketch doesn't, at least not out of the box. Not sure if there's a plugin for that. Doesn't do React code, but there are tools that allow us to actually turn this into a component at the same time. I'm gonna look at those later. What I did here in this card is what we did up here with the button, just on steroids. We have a card that has a size and it has a placeholder icon that we can later replace. It has a title, it has a description, and we see these have, can you see that? I hope you can see that on the stream. It has these lines, these boxes around it that are pinned to certain areas, but my problem here was that the component itself is only 148 pixels. So what did I click earlier to break this? Okay, yeah, that would do it. You are, oh no, not you. That broke it, and now I want to. So I could say for the alignment, what's this one? Auto width. Whatever, how much width you need for the text, use that, and it would keep growing horizontally. Which for the contents of a card, for the contents of a card isn't great, because then it flows out of there and it disappears, and you can only see part of the first line, or you can only see one line. I'd like this to break to multiple lines, so I can take it, drag it over here, and leave it some padding on the side, so it breaks into multiple lines. Now what I noticed, let's take this text, let's say description, hello world. In my mockups as well, I prefer to avoid, hey Don Marcus, hey Marcus, cool. Hello world, if I update my, now this took me out of it for a second, but no worries. What I like to do is avoid lorem ipsum, because lorem ipsum is the lazy designer's text. I want this to be as close to real content as possible, because lorem ipsum is not going to tell me anything. I want to have code, I want to have text in there that could be the real deal, so I know how to fill, how that could fill the layout. And I see Georg as well. Nice. Hi, dude. So I updated my text, but the card is yay big. That is just too big, and it doesn't update vertically, which isn't ideal. I want to see if what button I needed to press that I forgot to earlier that makes this shrink and grow with the contents of the page, as we saw with the button. It'd be super neat if I could add some text here. This, of course, is letters, not text. That is silly. Wow, that is laggy as well. Wow, I'm not even on the keyboard anymore. I haven't been for a while. Ooh, that's painful. Okay, I hope that works well enough. And it'd be neat if now the height of the card automatically adjusted, but it didn't. So let's see what we can add layout to. Keep in mind, this is not exactly HTML and CSS, so terms like flexbox will not appear here. Terms like gap also hard to be found. Nowhere to be found. Let's get you streaming. We'll respond. Oh yeah, sure, no worries. Yeah, Marcus, take your time. I'm here whenever. Looking forward to your answer, to your reply, but no rush at all. Now, this is not, we won't find CSS properties on here. So we have to figure out how do we do the same thing we would already probably know how to do in HTML, CSS. How do we do that in Sketch? And then we're going to move to Figma after this and see that that is a bit closer to the CSS world, actually. So looking at the service card, we have a group. That doesn't need to be a group because I had a secondary link on here that I am going to throw away, actually. These are all the layers that I have. I have a primary button, I have this icon up here, a title, a description, and the rectangle in the background. So this gray that we can, let's make that pink for a second. Let's make that light pink. And now everything's pink. I actually consider this as a branding color, so it might stay pink. It might stay pink, who knows. Now, these aren't grouped into anything yet. I could give the entire thing a horizontal or vertical layout. I don't know what that does. I thought I saw something shift. Okay. When I do horizontal, then the button, okay, then the button doesn't grow anymore. Then the button will always be the 57 or however long the placeholder text here is. Get started, tell me it looks right, but that is not what we want. We want the text, we want the button size, button width to always grow to however wide the respective text is. So if this says get started, I want the button to be yay wide. If this says tell me about your prototype, I want it to be yay wide. So horizontal layout isn't it. Even shifting this, like, it's not coming from CSS, it isn't super obvious to me what button to click here. Going on vertical layout looks a bit better. It doesn't really look like it changed anything either though. So the difference between none and vertical layout is nothing. Seems like it's nothing, but let's put it to vertical layout and let's bring the original text back and another line. And we saw it grew. That was exactly what we wanted, actually. That was a lot easier than I thought. So that means giving the component a vertical layout. If there is more space that you need in the vertical, you take it. Take what you want. While we are looking at that, I think that solved it. So if I take that out again, and if I now go to hello world, yeah, exactly. Okay, that solves an issue. That solves the issue of the card not growing. I don't have to update it manually anymore. Before, so when we didn't have the horizontal and vertical layout on here, hello world, then I had to go in, change the text, and resize the component, which, coming from an older tool, would always have been the case as well. So even just this step alone is fantastic, because the tools now take care of that for us. We can just put our text in there, and it will give us the space that we want. Kind of. Because it's only for the individual component so far. Let's look at these cards. We don't have the gap property in Sketch, but we have this thing over here. What do they call it, a gap, actually? Does this adjust vertical spacing between layers? So it kind of works like a vertical gap, in that we want to have those to have the same vertical distance between each two of the cards. And let's say we want to put it to 68 pixels. Why not? Just this is just to show how this works. And did I take off the layout again? I took out the layout again. Okay. Hey you. Now the card itself updates. That's nice. Like the button is up there. There's no big blank empty space, but the space between those I still have to adjust, because now between those two there's 228 pixels because we lost a bunch when the text disappeared. Let's see if we can do something about that. So I can take this, this, and this, and I can... there was something. Where was that? So I am first going to group them, tidy them, and give them... I'm not sure if that's going to do anything. So if I now go in here, no, it resizes the card. That wasn't it. But I wonder, there was a grid feature on here, right? So let's use the help. Something's really acting up on this machine. Make grid. There's a function in arrange, make grid. And I'm gonna click it. I honestly don't know what this does. So arrange, make grid. That's not at all what I wanted. So it gave us a table. Of what exactly? What is this now? So this says it's 2 cells and 2 cells. Is this a duplicate now? Oh, I have 4 groups now. Why do I have 4 groups now? Ah, because I made... Okay. We are going to have to take this artboard. Let's move it over to the side over here. Let's make it a bit wider. What did we just do? I took this original group. This was the group that I had. And it gave me more of them. This is another copy of the same group. Nope, that's not good. That wasn't the point at all. So I am going to select, instead of selecting the group that I had, I'm going to select all the layers. Let's tidy them up for now. So we have them here again, and let's try arrange, make grid again. Now it recognizes this. Where did it go? Where'd the thing go? It just gave me the selection. I wanted that. Nope. Where'd it go? So arrange, make grid. This says make grid, cells 1, so 1 in the horizontal, so 1 column, and 3 down, so 3 rows. Spacing of 70 in the horizontal, which doesn't matter because there's nothing in the horizontal. Might as well make that 0. What if we mess around with this now and say, let's give me 2 columns. Then it moves. Okay. It's good if you're in the early stages of development, of design, because now I have my web development, clickable prototypes, design sprints, design sprints, design sprints, design sprints. As much as I love design sprints, I'm not going to offer them 4 times because they are a very rigid schedule. That wouldn't make... I could easily replace them now. But what this make grid function now did is it took all the elements that I had and filled it up until I had 2 by 3 items. And now I could move those around. And if I go back to 1 column again, I'm back to my original 3. Cool, but I don't think if I finish now, I cannot find these settings anywhere. So I think they don't persist and they don't stay when I make changes, because those settings don't appear anywhere on the group. And they do not appear anywhere on the individual cards either. Okay, but there is another thing we could try. Let's see if we go back in here and go to Hello World. Again, nothing changes. That was expected. Because make grid is a one-time action. It only takes multi select, it creates a grid out of them, and then it lets us continue. There is my dog again. Hi, Cooper. Yeah, thanks. Sleepy time. He wants to learn some Sketch. He wants to go for a nap. There is also these pin to edge settings. So if we say we only stick to 3 surfaces, these are resize settings. So what happens to this selected element, this selected layer, in this case the group, when I resize it? So what happens when I did that on the card? Right, so for the icon, I placed the icon on this card in the top left. And I said when I resize the card, pin it to the left distance and the top distance, I keep those two the same. If I took that out, we can see a nice preview here when we hover over this field. I pinned the size, so this will always be 36 by 36 pixels, but when I resize the card, the icon here will move down. So instead of all of them, so if I have them all pinned to top and left, the icons all appear in the top and left, and if I unpin them from the top edge, nothing changes. That is not... Is that undone by the layout now? What are you doing to me? What are you doing to me? It's supposed to move down now. What are you doing? When I resize you... So, okay. At least we can see if I manually resize the card, the icon moves if it's not pinned to the top. Whereas if it is pinned to the top, I take the card and I resize it. The icon, see, always stays fixed in the top left position. I would expect it to move down to the middle though. So let's align it to the middle. Maybe that shows it a bit better. It's now on the symbol, so on the prototype, on the component, it's in the middle, but I told it pin to the left edge, pin to the top edge, so the distance of the icon to the top will always be the same distance here as it has here, as it has down here. If I unpin it, nothing changes. That must be because of the layout though, right? Yeah, okay, that is because of the layout, because if I turn the layout off, then it does move to the middle. So maybe I don't want my layout on the card itself. Maybe I don't want that on this service card component. But maybe I want to take everything on this side here, group it, and give that a vertical layout. Does that do anything? Yeah, that breaks everything. That is not at all what I wanted. And now I'm clicking random buttons in hope of fixing it. This is a visual glitch, right? This is not actually there. Yeah, no, this is just because something's happening to my machine. Why is the button here now? So the group. How do I want to resize the group when the card resizes? Right, I want it to be pinned to the top and bottom. Still no. Okay, so I think that was a bad idea. That was a bad call, because now I'm breaking absolutely everything. That's not ideal. So I am, because I know that I wanted to have the icon up here in the first place, I think on 20. Let's put the layout back on the card. Let's undo the damage that I did here. You people come out of the group again. That's better. Okay, that was scary. How do I want to move the cards around when things resize now? Can I pin individual cards? Can I? What do I want to do? Can I fix them on a set distance between the cards? Like I'd have with a gap property in CSS. And it doesn't look like it. So if I resize this group, the resize settings always, I assume the resize settings apply to the direct parent. So if I resize, I want this top card to always be at the same distance to the left and to the top. to make this a bit more, can I tint this? Okay, no, that's no, undo the tint. And if I do that to the second card as well, now I'm just honestly, again, guessing. I also want to pin you to the top and left, and the design sprints card I also want to pin to the top and the left. Now when I resize the card, something changes, but not what I wanted at all. Okay, because now they are, the top left position of each of these is now pinned to the same place it is at now. So not at all what I want. Okay, so at this point, I'd venture a guess and say it's not possible to use a gap property between these components in Sketch. So as nice as it is for this one component to resize when the content changes, that doesn't have any effect on its siblings, on the neighboring components. So the distance between those, I will still have to update manually, which honestly is not that much effort, because if I went in here, hello world, yeah, this doesn't need to be a word, that's fine. I can quickly select all of these, I can click tidy, and it jumped back to the 70, maybe because it remembered that I wanted 70, or maybe because that's what these two were at. But if we assume now this is a full layout of a website that is a bit or a lot longer, everything below this would be pushed down as well. So unless we can find something else that looks magical, we have align, we can just spread them out. We have distribute. Tidy is what this button here does. So it doesn't look like there's something we can use here. Layer. No. Doesn't seem like that would be of much help. Like working on individual components that can resize, it works super well. But in a larger context, let's look at maybe where are your settings for the components, hide interface, no. Customize toolbar. If there is something I'd expect it to be able to be put on the toolbar, what do we have here? Anything that looks like distribute or grid or gap. Group, ungroup, make grid we saw. Let's just put them in a grid. Show grid isn't it, because show grid, let's quickly show grid. Where was that? Show grid gives us just a grid that we can align things on. As nice as that isn't at all what I had in mind here. So undo show grid. What else could be on the toolbar? Not rulers, not slices. Probably not assistants. And layout also is just a help. It gives us columns overlaid on top of here, but only as a no layout top to no layout is the auto layout that we had there earlier, I assume. But when can we select that? Let's go on the service card. Where was layout? Layer, layout. Okay, yeah, exactly. So it's vertical, top to bottom. And that's the horizontal layouts. This is exactly these layout buttons over here. Minimum height doesn't help us. So that's a limitation there. There's another thing I want to see though, because with this we can work. Now that we know how to set the auto layout in one dimension on here, you can think of that like Flexbox settings. I think most closely resemble that. We can look at another. I tried something here. I just wanted to add a few different versions Yes, usually what I do when I have a new design, I just want to explore a few different options, usually on paper or in Notability, again, to quickly have something that I can throw away easily, that I don't get too attached to. I try to stay away from color in the beginning, because color can again lead to wrong conversations about I don't like this border radius, why is this button gray, I want it to be orange. That's not a helpful conversation. We want to figure out, is this the right piece of information that needs to be there? So that was one piece of layout. And then, as I said in the beginning, I like to do mobile first. So start with the smallest possible version, just one narrow column. And that is easy to lay out, because if there's only one column, it's only one dimension that we can have to make a decision on. Where in this vertical order does web development go? Where do clickable prototypes go? Like, where do we show testimonials? Where do we show the footer? Where do we show the header? It's easy to put something on a single line, or easier. But at one point we will get to, we will have finished the mobile version, and we will move on to, okay, what happens on a larger device? What if we made this a tablet now? One name you'll often see, and most of the CSS frameworks use that. We don't go by device types anymore. We don't say this is the iPhone layout, and this is the iPad layout, and this is the iPad Pro layout, and this is the MacBook layout. We usually go small, medium, large, extra large, because it's impossible now to match a device with a browser width to a specific device. I have the iPhone 12 Pro Max. The screen on here is dozens of times larger than the original iPhone, probably. So just matching by pixels wouldn't tell me what device, what layout to use. But if we use a layout for a given width, it will always fit that width. The way we do that, and let's see if adjust content on resize works here. If we now resized the page, right? This is what we would do in the browser as well. If we resize that at one point, we'd say, okay, now it looks kind of unpleasant. This is no longer useful. This very small text here, if the line grows too long, it becomes almost impossible to read without losing your place a few times. So what we do is we increase the browser's width, basically until it looks bad. And when it looks bad, we introduce a breakpoint, and at that breakpoint, we do something new with the content. So here definitely we have a point where I'd say this looks pretty bad now. Not everything was set to fixed size, so I'm gonna have to make a few adjustments to make this be less terrible. I had these at a, okay, so it updated to a width here. That's a convenient 780 pixels. That I think is even the iPad width. So these are, I'm looking at the horizontal dimension. How far from the side was that? That was 20 pixels. Now everything's moved a little. So let's say here it's 40 pixels. So we have some more space on the side for this to breathe. Same here. And if we go to 780 and we have 40 pixels on each side, you will be 700 pixels wide. Okay, that was just 1 pixel off. And then the text here was another 40 pixels in. So we're going to do 80 here. And all the dimensions are unfortunately all messed up now because I moved it incorrectly. Now what can we do with the button? If I just retype the text, it reorganizes it, it resets it to the correct width. That's neat. And then when we want to size, want to size the distance between two elements, I actually prefer going through this little slider here or through this setting up here, where it is basically a gap property. There was a 20 pixel gap between them, so let's go 20. That's the same again. And now we'd also do things like change the font size probably. I'm not going to do that because what I wanted to show is about these cards. We'll want to explore layout a bit today. What can we do automatically with it that makes it easier for us to put this on a to organize this layout across multiple breakpoints? Is there a way to organize that once across multiple breakpoints? So for one thing, this card, okay, so we saw this pink card earlier, and I had two other versions, one that didn't look like a card at all, and one that looked like this rainbow card. And this didn't have a layout yet. We learned that we want to set it to vertical layout here. And if I now change the text here, this automatically updates, and here as well. Nice. And this one also a bit too wide, just add and remove. Cool. Space between those had a vertical gap of 40 pixels. So let's select this 1, 2, 3. Tidy, set them to 40 as well. You might say this is desktop now, this is tablet now, let's give it a bit more space to breathe. Let's stick to 40 to see the difference. Now on the mobile layout, this card width was comfortable enough to read, and on the larger display this isn't comfortable to read. What we found earlier, and we're going to use that right here, is the make grid, because now I have enough space that I can put two cards side by side. Having one card span the entire width doesn't work. So without me having to go in, now that would have been the olden days, right? Go in, resize this up to here, and then resize this up here and put it in here and make sure they're the same height. None of that. We are going to undo another one. I have to make sure that I don't go too far back. Select these three cards, go to make grid. I don't know why, maybe I'm clicking something. Make grid. Give me one cell, no, give me two cells. And two columns. It is there, but that's not what I had in mind at all. Okay, so I'm going to have to, so they are here. We can see there's something over here, and there's a fourth one over here. It copied design sprints. Again, I'm going to put you in a group. And what happens when I resize the group now? Does everything resize? Nice. That is neat, isn't it? So I can now take this entire thing, and I would expect these cards to be the same width. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And you, I want to have 40 pixels. Oh, okay. That it doesn't do well now. That it doesn't do well, but that's okay. We might have to do some manual math. We said this one is 700 pixels, so these two cards together will be 700 pixels. There's 40 pixels between them. That leaves 660, and if we have two of them, that gives me 330 pixels for each card, and applies to the two at the bottom here as well. 330. Tidy. Oh, and Tidy moved it up here, and I know for a fact that I can't do magic, so I can't do... I don't want to recreate this layout in CSS, so we are going to keep you on 40. So this group is 700 pixels wide. Move down 1 pixel here. They are different heights now though, so why are you different heights? Didn't you update automatically? Why didn't you? So if I go back in, and no. So I have two ways of adjusting the text. We see here, it highlights what element the element I'm hovering over. that I would change. So I could double click in here and go web development is nice. And it updates the card. It might not, okay, so if I put it in the grid, it might not update the card automatically. It might not update the layout. Some manual action still required. Okay, that's good to know. I mean, we're not judging that here, and this card is a duplicate anyways. And I know that if this was proper grid, like HTML grid, I would make these cards the same height. So it would look like this. These cards would be the same height, and then this would be its own separate height, however much it needs. I have to update the text manually once for it to do the layouting again. Okay, if I do that here, it will always resize it again. That is a bummer, unless I fix the size. Does that change it? No, even if I tell it to fix height, still always resets it. But ideally we're not going to change it a lot. But what's a bit unfortunate is that these two prototypes, these two layouts are not connected now. So let's say I want to rename this from web development is nice. This one still only says web development, and that's kind of what I was hoping to solve or make easier, where I have one component and have the content once and it updates in multiple places. So far I don't see anything in Sketch, at least that would allow me to do that. The only option I'd have is if I made this the entire group a component, but then I couldn't move it around. If I made this a reusable symbol, and if I reused it across multiple layouts, that wouldn't work. So if we want to stick with Sketch, I believe that this is what we'd have to do. Ideally, I enjoy jumping into the code as soon as possible. This is to show an idea. Spending too much time in a design tool, I might regret saying this in a bit. Spending too much time in a design tool isn't necessarily always 100% worth it. Like, perfecting every pixel in here is not going to guarantee that every pixel is going to be perfect in the browser, because the only thing that shows me how it's going to look in the browser is the browser. This seems to be the options that we have here. Unless I'm missing something in the menus up here, honestly, there might be a plugin that does it. There is a big selection of plugins. Let's actually look what they have. Get plugins. I am going to explore that, because it'd be unfair to say it definitely doesn't have it. Oh, why is OBS over here? You go over there, my friend. And where is the browser now? Here. Sorry. No. You come over here. There. That didn't need to be this complicated. There is a bunch of plugins that do some of that. Sorry, now I'm missing that. Now I see you again. There are a bunch of featured plugins. There are official plugins, automatic SVG compression, loading images, random images from the Unsplash API, and then a bunch of community provided plugins. And this is, you see the browser, the scroll bar over here. There is a lot in here. And quick plug, if you want to install a broken plugin, there is the Dad Jokes plugin that I definitely did not update in August of last year, did I? I don't think I updated. No, they're all set to August. I did not update this. This has been broken since like 2 days after I released it. It is supposed to give you an option to select a text layer, click a button, and then you get a dad joke in there. It doesn't really work. So it's likely that it's possible that what I'm looking for is somewhere in here. Let's look for responsive click-through prototype. Quest creates responsive pages. Auto layout. I have no way of knowing which of these is good. This, from the first look, doesn't seem exactly like what we want. Can you change, hey, you and the GIF, you change a thing in one of them? Yeah, not really. Okay, potentially. So it could, this feature could exist, but it's definitely not, and I can close the one password. It definitely does not exist in Sketch out of the box, as far as I can tell. So let's move on to the next tool. And let's try to do the same in Figma. And I just spent a few minutes on here recreating the setup from Sketch. So this is the element that we're looking at today, right? Sketch and Figma have different keyboard shortcuts. So of course I'm zooming all over the place now. I have these 3 cards that I want to, and this is the same width. This is the iPhone 13 Pro 390 pixel wide. Now, first of all, I want to make this as close to what we had in Sketch as possible. So in Sketch, it was 350 pixels wide, 350. But this didn't update everything. You can see here the text box doesn't go all the way to the side, so probably some auto layout, right? This is what we had here. I have the icon. Is that what it looked like in Sketch? Yeah. Let's zoom into a card so we can compare it. And let's just, so we can see it over here, give this a background color, the thing with the border. It works, so the concept of how we use Figma and Sketch is near identical, but there are differences that we will encounter in a second. Over here, we see Sketch calls them, does Sketch call them components? No, yeah, create component. Figma calls them components, Sketch calls them symbols, but they are reusable pieces coming from React, components, or from any of the front-end frameworks that we can use multiple times and put different properties in, different titles, different texts. And we see here a list of layers, and we have dimensions that we can set. We have auto layout. We have resizing, hug contents, and fill container and fixed height. Those I'll have to play around with because they were not there last time I worked with Figma extensively. Fill colors, stroke colors, effects even. So drop shadows or inner shadows on text is probably not a good idea. Now the problem that I have is that this text here, let's see if I can give it a background color. No, fill is only for the text. Then let's add a rectangle just as a placeholder. Okay, this knows that there is a limit here. There's a padding somewhere. And it grows with the container. Interesting. Now, if you were only 200 pixels wide. Okay. So to solve this little problem here of the text not reaching all the way to the side, what options do we have? Auto width, auto height, fixed size. So let's just play around. This is what we had in Sketch originally, where all text was in a single line. Auto width, just take as much width as you need. That is incredibly pointless because I cannot read my text. fixed size is also not ideal, because then the text will always have to fit in here and it will overflow and will look terrible. So auto height, take as much height as you need. But why are you only yay wide? What can I change in here now? What should I change in here now? So if we go to this description, okay, if it's set to auto height, I need to tell it it's okay for you to run all the way here, be as wide as the title. But that's not as wide as I want it to go. Title and description are in a group. So I have nested auto layouts here. I have stacked, multiple stack layouts, multiple nested flexboxes in the end. This is close to what flexbox would do. And can I tell you to, when resizing, fill the container? Does that do anything? Fill container, so I have fill container, fixed width, and hack contents. And I don't know. Fill container seems right. Does this entire thing have a resize behavior? When resizing can either be fixed width, so this can't be fill container. How do I get, so this grows to the width of the thing. How can I have you take up as much width as I want you to? Auto layout. So this is why the container couldn't, this gray bar couldn't grow wider. We have set a padding here of 24 pixels. So on each side is 24 pixels. That means this here is at 24, 24. This is from the top left. This is not from the border, because it doesn't know about the border. From the top left, if my border is 4 pixels, that means border to content is 20 pixels, same as I had it in Sketch. Fixed width or fill container. Fill container seems right. Okay, if I set this to fill container and it was set to fixed width, let's put you to 100 pixels. This little gray bar was set to be 100 pixels wide. It's always 100 pixels wide, and with these settings it's always fixed to that width. Or I can set it to fill container, and bam, it will fill the container. So that seems like a setting that I want. Now, because I have the nested layouts, there is another layout in here that I might have to undo. Maybe I went a bit trigger crazy with the layouts. If I go fill container here, that doesn't do it. Okay, I'm gonna undo the auto layouts here. You auto layout disappear. You auto layout disappear. And this is just the group of the icon with the pointer inside of it. This frame here, why are you a frame in the first place? So let's put you all on the top level. How about we break everything? How's that sound? Does that sound cool? Good. Okay, this still has an auto layout. All auto layouts are gone. Let's start from 0 and let's try to recreate it. This gray thing, rectangle can go. I want this group here to be 24 pixels from the top. And when we resize, I want it to be attached to the top left. That's what we had in Sketch as well. And then I want the title. Let's ungroup everything. Let's ungroup this. And it doesn't, the order in the layer panel, doesn't matter. Even if the title comes before the description here, where I put it in the layer only matters if things actually overlap, or we have Boolean operations between shapes. For styling, just text, it doesn't make a difference. So I want you, and we see this container is resized now, while the component that I'm styling here is 308 pixels wide. That's just because I drew a random size, random width shape. It's used at 350 here. That gives us a difference of a few pixels. And the text now moves into the component. I want it to be anchored to the left column at the same indentation as the icon. So if that changes, I want it to not be centered. Right now, we can't see it well, but this container here that the text goes into, that container is centered. I want the container to be, let's start with left aligned. And now we see this container is aligned to the left, but it doesn't go all the way to the right. So I can select this layer and say you are not left aligned, not right aligned, you are left and right aligned. And I think this is closer to what I want. Yes, okay. Exactly, because now the distance on the left is the same as the distance on the right. And that is what I want for the description as well. So I don't want it to be centered when things resize. I want it to be left and right aligned, right anchored. Should be the same text layout as we had in Sketch. Do you want a blog online shop price? Price, yeah, calculator or something much more. Like, yeah, line breaks seem similar. What is not the same is that just bugs me. So I have to go in here real quick and check the font size is 14 and the line height is 20, because this isn't as nicely readable. Let's go back to here. The original component. Font size is 14 and line height is not auto 70 but 20. This reads a bit nicer. Now the distance between these two. Also we have a gap property now here. This is 8 pixels. Let's make this identical to what it is here. Here I also had to select these two, and this was 8 pixels in the vertical. 8 pixels in the vertical. And then the button and this. What's up with the description? Okay. The button and this, they have, it's also given, was it 8 pixels? What's the distance between these two? That's more than 8, that's 18 pixels. Doesn't really, I need this to be neat, of course. 18, now it is still, what's now the distance between here isn't wide enough. If you are here, zoom in, I need this to have the same inner padding. When the card resizes, now the button ends up here, because the dimension it has in this component is at the Y coordinate of 170. And it's the same height for all of them. There is blank space down here. I'm not sure if I did that or if that happened automatically, but it is always on that height. That is silly. So that's where I added the one auto layout. Boom. There it is. But, and that's why I had it nested differently before, we now have an auto layout where it gives me a, and if we hover over here, spacing between items, so a gap property really, of 18 pixels. But I don't want to have the same distance. I want this description text to be closer to the title. Can I go in here and adjust that now? The option's gone. There is no more option for me to give an individual gap property, so now I have to group them. And let's try to watch the cards over here. If I group them, nothing changes yet, but I get this gap property back. I can now set a property of 8. And we see everything else still has 18 pixels between it. We can't really see it well here. But this distance didn't change. This distance now is shorter. That's why I had so many nested groups in here before. I might not need more. Now for the space between them. Oh, okay. Okay, and now the other thing broke again. So the fixed width of the description is back in here. That's not what I wanted. So instead of fixed width, fill container, and it's okay. It's the fill container setting. I don't know why did this just lose its width? Okay, when I set this group that contains the description and the title. Order again in here doesn't matter, even if it says title description here. It's fine if it says description title over here. If I set this to fill container, the text in here will break differently, but my component will suddenly become narrow, which is fine. It's perfectly fine. It just surprised me that it didn't stick to the width that I gave it. If I resize it now, it's probably okay. It probably doesn't make any difference. Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. So I could now easily set this to a nice clean 300 pixels, use it at 350. This entire component is 350 pixels wide. Easy. Okay, this is all the layout that we need now. These 3 teasers I already put into a group, and there is an auto layout between them as well. What? No, that's your auto layout. Is there an auto layout? There wasn't an auto layout between them yet. And we had in Sketch here, to make this exactly the same, here we had 40 pixels between them. So let's say this gap property, 40 pixels, and we have exactly the same as we do in Sketch. Now I want to see if there is a better way to reorganize that on a larger display. And I am going to duplicate it because I don't want to accidentally break it in case this is... I need to revert back to this. If I select my frame here, no, my frame here of the 3 teasers, there is auto layout. Horizontal direction puts them next to each other. I mean, that in itself is pretty cool. If I go through my design and say this doesn't look so well in the vertical, I want to try the horizontal, it's a click and everything's already organized. We see this gap icon even flips from vertical to horizontal. That is pretty convenient. Point to Figma here, definitely. What's this? Alignment and padding. If inside of this group I wanted to give them padding, don't need to really. Clip content, if it overflows, let it overflow. And fixed position when scrolling, like this could now be made interactive. I don't really want that. So what I wanted to see is if there is a way to now connect these 2 states. To say you have a small version, you have a medium version, let me change it in one place, let me change the content in one place, but then I want it to switch to another. I don't need this to be fully interactive. I don't need to be able to go in here, resize my artboard, and everything move around. It's not necessary for this to be this interactive. This is a design, for how I use it, this is a design tool. And it's okay if I have to go in and have multiple artboards. That's perfectly okay. What is annoying is that I have to make the same changes in the content in multiple places. And I saw a word earlier that might help us with that. Where did I see the word? Because next to auto layout, I also saw variant. Let's start with layout grid. What is it? Layout grid. Ah, okay. Layout grid is same as we had in Sketch. Where you at? I would assume this to just show me a layout over the things. Show me grid. That's probably not it, but if I select the entire screen, that's not it either. Where did I see the word variant? Because that's the term that we are going to come across if we look at Framer in a second or in a bit. Here on my component, on my teaser component, there is something called variants. And what is it? So I had a quick look at Framer earlier because the team there was cool enough to give me preview access to the Framer Sites feature. And there in Framer, a variant is a different version of the same component that it can show when we, for example, when we hover over something, when we create an interactive prototype and we want to show people if you hover over your card, it becomes animated and it moves around and new elements appear. You can have a like feature, you can have a link, you can have a share feature appear when you interact with the card. That's what a variant is, and I assume that's probably similar here. So let's try that. Variant Loki. The variant Loki. So what do we have here? We have now in my teaser component. That's interesting. In my teaser component, I see default, which is the top, and I see variant Loki at the bottom. And let's change one thing. Let's change the background color of this here to, yeah, let's make you this color. And same for the button. Why not? It's okay if this is ugly, right? This is just to show what a variant is. How do I now, what does it mean? What does it mean? If I now have this component on my page, property 1 default or variant Loki. So maybe that's not for interactivity, but for switching between slightly different modes of them. Is there a way to make this interactive? Instance options? No. Maybe in the prototype. If we go to interactions on tap, yeah, sure. God, I completely forgot how this works. So I selected this on tap. Yeah. What happens on tap? Navigate to, change to, open overlay, swap overlay, close overlay, back, scroll to, or open link. I would expect it to give me an option to use a variant now, which is what I think they do in Framer. So if we scroll to, oh no, scroll to logo, sure. Seems right, so let's play with this prototype. It's probably not at all what I want. I'm kind of doing a comparison between them. We're looking at how to do one feature between them. Framer is alive. They're working on a cool new thing that I get access to. I can show you in a second. If I click on here, okay, so what we wanted to compare is how do we make sure that we have an easy time managing different layouts using the same content, the same components, without having to duplicate that all over the place. Doesn't seem like that is it either. So far, I mean, we haven't tried the prototype feature. in Sketch would work similarly, but I can't see a way for me. Like, I mean, this is convenient enough, right? Giving us a way to move that around. But if I now go to, as I did in Sketch, web development is nice. That doesn't update here, unless we. I mean, there's one more thing we can try. There's one more thing we can try. We can take this entire frame. We can take these 3 cards and make them a component. So I'm gonna take you, I'm gonna move you out, and I'm going to call you service cards, and this over here, what's called teaser, is a service card. Now on here, I just want to see if it's possible to say I want this component, but have a slight adjustment in here. I have an assets page here that I can import the service cards from. You go on 1, 2, 3, 4, and now instead of having it duplicated here, give me the service cards. Maybe, okay, so I can't switch the auto layout on this now because this is apparently hard-coded on here. But maybe that's what we can do with a variant now. If I go to my service cards component, I say variants. If I go horizontal, property 1, so we have default, can I call you vertical? And you are horizontal, can I change you? But that still wouldn't, okay, we'll see, I don't know if that would make a difference. So now I can say, give me service cards, the horizontal version. I mean, the comment from the chat, yeah, there's limited use to it, right? It's as long as you can lay out the page in the way that you want, it's perfectly fine. You can get lost, and I got lost in Framer for a long time. I drew up the most perfect mock-ups, made them ideal to the last pixel, and then they were never used. It's sometimes futile. But I want to see if this makes it easier now to say I have this one page content, and this is what I want it to look like on different screens. So at least I can easily switch the same cards around and horizontal and vertical. That is neat. But I assume that if I make a change in the original one, web development is super cool. Yeah, right. Okay, so it only changes the vertical one. Fair enough, because even if we have 2 variants, and we can't even see the second one here, because why won't you show me the second one? Okay. So we have a vertical version as the vertical variant and horizontal as the horizontal variant, but these aren't connected either. They are 2 different versions. It gives me one location to maintain them. So if I want to make a change to this component, I know if this now says web development is super cool, I can go in here, is super cool, so that at least is a bit more convenient. It's still the same amount of work in 2 places. Again, unless I'm missing something. Unless there's something here with breakpoints that I'm not seeing. Maybe. So far, in this comparison alone, I'd say it's neck and neck. Like if you want to use Figma for your mockups or Sketch, flip a coin. It doesn't really, there's nothing in one or the other. Figma, I'd say, is probably a bit closer to how we'd call things in CSS. And it might be a bit easier to transfer that over later. The controls are near identical. And Figma has the added benefit of being free for 1 up to I think the limit is 2 editors. So if you have a larger team, you will have to pay. But if you work on something in a small team and only 2 people need write access, it's a perfectly valid choice to get started with. I think you can have more viewers, and they would get access to the inspect view that gives us all the CSS, right? It looks nice, and if you don't know how CSS works or how iOS and Android styling works, seems like all the work's done. It's good. It's decent. It's a lot better than what the tools gave us a few years ago. This even knowing about does it have flex on here somewhere? Yeah, align items, flex start, display flex. That wasn't even a thing when Dreamweaver was around. So while it won't do the entire job for us, it is close enough. Now we have one more thing that I want to dive into, and that I haven't used a lot. We're gonna do a quick overview. If you are from the Framer team, I'm sorry I can't do this justice yet. I had a quick exploration of this earlier. So far, I must say I am impressed with some of the things that I saw. Don't know how to recreate all of them yet. So that will be my main challenge here. I'm looking forward to diving into this a bit deeper. But let's start from doing. Let's take a step back. Framer is. I was on a meetup once in Munich. That was when we still had meetups. 3 years ago at this point probably. They showed Framer X and how you can add interactivity and how you can have the crossplay with React code in here. Because if we, what did I have? Do I have the teaser on here? Yeah, okay. I started recreating the same thing, and I only had a border on here. Let's quickly add a title and description. I'm not going to do the full thing here, but just to see. You probably have a button component, right? Basic element button. And sorry, I don't know the interface too well yet. Overrides maybe. File examples, override select, edit code, edit code, edit code. And there you are. This is React code. We jumped into a React code representation of what I'm working on, I assume. Giving me components, giving me fully typed code, which looks decent. So that is one of the benefits of Framer, that it gives you the React code and you can work on the React code as you would in React code. And with their Framer sites, what that is their hosted version. So we're no longer working on a mockup, but on a production-ready version of this site. We could take what we have here, and you see I'm adding new pages. I'm adding links between my pages. I could take this and I could deploy it with their to their servers. I could publish it and it would be live and usable. It wouldn't be just a prototype. This would be my website. Look at framer.com/sites, right? framer.com/sites, yeah. To explore the sites feature, you can request early access to that. From what they offer and what they promise, it seems very interesting. I'm not sure if I would make the switch yet, because it's a new tool for me, right? I've spent so much time in Sketch and Figma that I would have a hard time just dropping those for something else. But it's worth exploring, definitely, I'd say. I want to see how maybe we can figure out how their breakpoints feature works, because if those are pages that and let's actually allow me to destroy what I did here. If this is a version of the site that we are going to deploy, We don't want to create just one version. We want to have this be responsive, and that's the mode that I'm looking for. So when we start out, we get one document that is desktop sized. It's 1200 pixels wide by default. You can probably change that, adjust that here. I bet there's some defaults somewhere. And then we can add this. It says breakpoint over here. Add another one, and let me actually let me delete those two, because those I don't need now. Ah, you are primary. Okay, I cannot delete that one. But I am going to use your insert, your pre-made components. This looks pretty nice. You have like a semi Tailwind UI set up with you can pick from different heroes. Let's say I want that one. I want that one. Put that on. Do I drag you on here? Yeah, I drag you on here. This is now my hero. I can make adjustments, and I want to, I'm probably gonna have to copy you, put that on here. And why is it on here twice now, right? It shows up 2 times. And if I move this around, if I make changes, which one? So the bottom one. Okay, so the top one is the one that I added before. The bottom one is the one that is coming in now. This is where I was confused in Framer. No, Figma. God damn it. In Figma, where their variants are also different layouts. So this could be phone. Seems a bit wide for phone. Okay, I had to make this adjustment. Probably imported it in here wrong. I have 2 navigations. That's fine for now, because that's not what we're here for. Build big things with small teams. Now I have this hero on here twice. We see it though. I added it in its desktop variant before, and now I have a second one on here with its phone variant. And if I switch that to desktop, this one's still the same. This one I can remove. And I have this on here. This is the same component now, as I understand it. This seems to be the same thing in a different size. I can also add another breakpoint. There's a few pre-configured ones, and I just clicked add it, and it gave me this copy with this component set to the tablet variant. I don't know how it works yet, but this alone shows me that these must be connected and that I get the same component in 3 different sizes. Now let me I haven't checked this earlier. Let me check what happens when I try to make a change now. How can I make a change now? Hero video. It's probably not in the overrides. How can I go in here, override with hover? No, this is different effects. Can I go in here and change you? I'm not sure how these pre-made components work. Can I right-click you, select? All. I'd like to be able to go in here and change a text now, but this seems... Maybe if I change something in here. Maybe if I try a different component. You see, I did not spend enough time with this yet, but let's take something smaller. Let's take a button. Look at how this button appeared everywhere now. That's something that I would have had to do manually in both Sketch and Figma. And if I go in here, and okay, there it says label over here. So clicking this doesn't do anything, but I can change the text if I select the button. And where's the label? Label's here now. Click me, please. And that updated across the entire thing. Like all breakpoints are updated now. That is kind of what I was looking for. That is, I can have components. I can add them on the, I can focus first on the smallest breakpoint. And I bet that if I move it around on here now, it moves around on the breakpoints individually. And because I assume I broke a connection in the positioning, I could maybe undo that if I knew where the button was. Where is a preview mode? How can I now preview? Open preview. Maybe I couldn't change anything about this because it's a video. Maybe this is a demo. But we see click me please. Where does it say? It doesn't say which breakpoint that is, but I know roughly where the breaks should be. Let's actually check. Let's confirm. So we have phone at whatever. We have tablet at, I believe, 810 to 1199. And then desktop and up is 1200. Back to the preview. I move it around 400, 600, 700, and 800, and there everything moved. Okay, so cool. The video at the top, that updated. My button moved around, and let's see if we can even, and here now the button is a bit further down, just too much chrome around this to show you. Click me. Can we change the text of this button on breakpoints, or is that limit? Where's the label now? Click me on the tablet. Does that update? Okay, so now if I'm on the tablet breakpoint and I update the text in the button, where does it update? It updates only on the tablet version. I assume I now broke a connection between the text somewhere, because desktop still says click me please. Let's move the button around and say click me on the desktop. I'm gonna make this example super easy because I have not spent enough time with it yet. It's the same button. It's the same button. One time the text changes and then the text and the color change. Back to the preview. Yeah, so on the small version it says click me please, then it says click me on the tablet and click me on the desktop, and we see the button moves around differently on each of them. Like here it's attached to the left side with this distance. Here it's attached somewhere in the center, and this is fixed. And I could go into the settings here and figure out why that is, right? We saw that in Sketch and Figma earlier. It's probably in the connections here and where the position is set, in where it's pinned. We have, looks like the exact same settings as we did in the other two. We can set the opacity, visible, true, and false. That is, like, it's meant to be, this is meant to be interactive and change things on screen. And it comes with the added, let's look at the code feature real quick. This is a button, regular variant or shadow variant. Okay, a variant with a shadow, subtle shadow. Neat. Icon, mouse, what? Icon list plus. What icon? Okay, this doesn't have, maybe buttons can have icons, I assume. Scroll target, export code. Code, this is a button. Icon 1, list plus, label, variant. Sorry, I'm in the way. This panel down here is where it shows the code. If I go to all props and use props, this is the same. And I assume that there is a way to edit this as well, probably. Probably wouldn't just give me the code to create this button, because this component has to come from somewhere as well. I mean, for the feature, considering the feature I was looking for today, like how can I make a change in content in one place and adjust the layout and adjust the same content across multiple breakpoints? I'd say for that alone, Framer wins. It's the only one that seems to make this possible at all. Their variants, like this is why I did vertical and horizontal variants, because that's what I saw in Framer. This seems to cover that use case. So if that's what I decide, and there is also of course the possibility of publishing it through Framer directly, creating it in there and publishing it, hosting it there. You don't have to worry about getting your own hosting somewhere, which means all the code has to be editable somewhere if you want to add, I assume, like tracking scripts and stuff. That is something that the others don't offer. Even without that feature, even if you use it just to create the design and the layout and make sure that you have an easier time with that, it is worth checking out. If you want, you can build your entire site in it, I assume, and you can update it from there and publish a new version. I'm not brave enough to hit the publish button now because I don't know what's going to happen. But considering the layout feature that I was going for today, I'd say this is the winner. Between the three of them, I'm sure I didn't try to recreate this layout now in Framer, but we saw how easy it was to transfer over to Figma. This is not something very, very uncommon. So all of them will be able to do exactly the same. If you find a tool now that fits well for your workflow and for your, sometimes even for the aesthetics, and that will work well for your team, you can't go wrong between any of them. There's more, of course. I haven't tried the Adobe suite for that. That is unfortunate. You can't pick a bad tool. If you're looking for the kind of workflow that helps you across the breakpoints, as I actually am at the moment, then I'd say try to get on the beta version of Framer sites. I don't know if regular Framer does the same, but this is what I was looking for today. I hope that helped. I think I'm gonna cut it here. Thank you for following along. There's gonna be another stream similar to this in 2 days. So I stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 p.m. Central European time on Twitch. I upload the videos the day after on YouTube if you want to see the old recordings, because Twitch only keeps them around for 14 days. So there's a bit more over there. I announce what I'm going to work on Twitter, twitter.com/dumbhabersack, same as my handle on here. I don't have a channel name on YouTube yet because I need more subscribers. If you like this, I'd like the subscribe. Thank you, and I guess I'm gonna talk to you soon. Bye bye.